Well, good morning. How are you? Are good? Couple people good, couple people not sure. It is early. So fun to be with you. It's kind of nice to be in a place where I'm part of my own tribe. Like, I'm a Church of Christ pastor. I'm part of the tribe, and we're on the other side of the country normally, but it's so fun to be with you today. And Andy and Kim, thank you for giving me the privilege to serve you today. I really do count it a privilege. Most of you have never met me. So what I love to do in this environment is just share a little bit about myself. And this photo that's about to come up is my family. So Jill and I have been married for close to 30 years. 30 years next year, which is pretty nuts. Bailey on the right is 25. He's an electrician. And then you've got Isabel down the front. She's 23. She's studying chiropractic, and proud dad moment, she's doing exceptionally well. And the cool thing is I no longer have to pay for my chiropractic treatments. It's really, really cool. And then Geordie on the left is Mr. Entrepreneur. He's the guy who at 18, 19 said, "Hey, Dad, I'm thinking about importing an inflatable nightclub from China." I went, "Okay." And he had a moment. And he goes, like, he did the whole process. He did the journey, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, I'm a bit nervous." "Why are you nervous, son?" "Because I'm about to send a whole lot of money to people I don't know." And I said, "Okay, so what's the worst case scenario?" And he goes, "I'm 19, I can make more money." I went, "There's your answer." And he imported this thing and made his money back, and now he's bored and he's studying real estate. So between the three of them, that is my retirement plan. Like, I've been in church world for a little while now and not-for-profit space now. That is my retirement plan. So if you can be praying for us that they do exceptionally well, that would be very, very beneficial to us. I'm here today as a friend of the church, but also representing Kids Hope. And what I thought I'd do, rather than trying to explain the whole story, I'll allow our patron, Tim Costello, to share a bit about Kids Hope. So if you'd look to the screen.
Anyone working with children knows the challenges they face these days. Many children, over 1 million Australian children, live in disadvantaged homes. We've seen children who show behavioural and emotional issues, who experience disadvantage, hardship or conflict in their homes. And on top of this, children have to manage peer pressures, often hidden from sight through technology. How can we equip and prepare our children to thrive socially, emotionally and academically? How can you bring hope to the next generation? Well, there is good news. Since 2004, Kids Hope mentors have worked with thousands of Australian primary school children. They have done one-to-one mentorship, and because of that mentorship, they literally have seen kids' lives transformed into resilience, hope and confidence. Kids Hope is Australia's largest early intervention school-based mentoring program. It's no surprise that teachers around the country have told us how one mentor working with one child for 1 hour a week has such a significant and positive impact on children. They have seen children's emotional needs met and their learning capacity enhanced. Independent research from Griffith and Monash universities confirmed that Kids Hope brings hope, confidence, resilience and security. Principals in tears have told me how it has made such a difference. This program works. I've often described Kids Hope as a gift to our schools, and that is why I am inviting you today to partner with Kids Hope and bring hope to every child. The investment is small, the impact immeasurable.
Our model is that we connect churches with schools. The churches engage and serve the school, providing mentoring through Kids Hope, and whatever else the opportunity whatever other opportunities may come for that church. I was recently saw a vice principal who invited herself to the local church to share, not dissimilar size to this, and share about what it meant for them to have a partnership with a local church. This person would not call herself a person of faith. Yet there she is saying, if it wasn't for the church connection, we would have so many more challenges in our school. And then she's got a hotline to the pastor. She's calling, "Hey, we need this help, we need that help, can you help, can you help, can you help?" And they're just like, "Yep." It's beautiful to see. The need is so very significant. There's been a 45% increase in childhood social anxiety disorder. 1 in 10 kids now experience mental health disorders. 3/4 of kids with clinical anxiety do not get the care they need. School avoidance is on the rise, now more than ever, and over the years, especially post-COVID, we've seen a significant increase in kids having mental health needs. The challenges are so significant. To date, we've seen over 20,000 mentoring relationships. That number's a bit outdated, that's about 5 years old. It would have to be more like 25 or 30,000 across the span of the time of Kids Hope. Right now, we have around 183 programs across the country, 920 mentoring relationships happening right now, where a mentor will go into a school for an hour and support and hang out with a kid who's facing vulnerability. What we do, we know works. And it's our desire to see Kids Hope mentoring available to every Aussie kid who needs it. Today we're going to have a look at a passage from the Bible, from the letter of James's letter to the church. It's commonly believed that this particular James is the brother of Jesus and would have seen a whole lot of stuff in his time. And he's writing to the scattered church across the nations. This particular church was scattered because you read in Acts 6 verse 7 that Stephen was stoned to death. One of their leaders was stoned to death. Those who were following Jesus bolted, as you would, because you'd be next. And they found themselves in all these different places. One writer describes this letter as James, the leader of the Jerusalem church, writing as a pastor to instruct and encourage his dispersed people in the face of their difficulties. Now, we know this group were facing trials. It makes sense. They'd left their own country, they've left their own culture. And in fact, this group of people have already had a culture shift in their life. You see, they were brought up in the Jewish traditions. They had ideas and ways and processes and things and laws they had to do. They just followed the particular rules that they had to do. And if they followed them really well, they were okay with God. If they sacrificed the right thing at the right time and said the right things in the right way, they were okay with God. And then Jesus comes and changes everything. All of a sudden, Jesus, this man who was in their world, lived the perfect life, was then killed, rose again for the forgiveness of their sins, and then ascended to heaven. And this group of people experienced that journey. Many of them would have seen him after he was resurrected. And all of a sudden, this group of people have gone from, well, we know all these Jewish traditions and these ways of doing things. Those things now still make sense, but in a totally different context. We can best see that through the transformation of Paul. You know, he went from this person who was killing the Christians to the one who wrote most of what we now know as the New Testament. The transformation that he had and experienced. That's what these people would have gone through already. And now they were in a new place, in a new town, with different people and customs and cultures and things going on around them. Pagan worship. What they believed was just a normal part of society is no longer a normal part of society. They've gone from one community to another. Kind of like moving from the UK to Australia. Hey, Andy. Like you come to a place where everything makes sense, to a place where now you're hanging out with former convicts. like seriously, you have to understand what these people would have been going through. Have you ever started in a new job? And you go into this new place and you go, that culture's a bit weird. They're doing things differently, and a few months later you become like them. My family moved to Adelaide for 18 months a number of years ago, and all of a sudden my kids' language started changing. They went from kinder to kinde. Lego to Lego. Like, what the heck, man? I've spent quite a bit of time in India over my life, and I love it. I love India. I love the food. I love the people, but I become Indian when I'm around them. I've got a staff member who's from India, and I had to sit down with her and said, look, Amrita, I have to be upfront with you. There's every possibility I'm going to wobble my head when we're talking. And there's every possibility I'm going to respond with a, which is yes. And she said, that's fine, no worries at all. We go to an Indian restaurant, my kids go, Dad, stop being Indian, it's embarrassing. I can't help it because I've been so immersed in the culture, I find myself doing this. When I chat to an Indian person, if I ever do that to you, please just know it's out of reverence and love and respect. Nothing more than that. There's something that happens when we find ourselves in a new culture. We kind of become who we hang out with. Without knowing it or not, without making a conscious decision, we can easily become like the culture that we're immersed in. And James is saying to the followers of Jesus, don't do it. Don't do it. Be on guard. He's actually saying anything that conflicts with the ways of Jesus, beware. Don't do it. So that's the context of his letter. And in James 1, 26 and 27, we pick up some of that narrative. In fact, this verse is often referred to as kind of the example for the rest of the book. It's kind of the linchpin, if you like, for the rest of the book, the rest of the letter he wrote. It says this: those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after the orphans and the widows in their distress and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. This verse sets up the rest of his book. If you look at your study Bible, you just have to look at the titles through the rest of the book. It says favoritism forbidden, faith and deeds, taming the tongue, 2 kinds of wisdom, submit yourselves to God, and so on. This verse sets up the rest of what he's trying to say. So let's just spend a little bit of time looking at that verse in a bit more detail. Those who consider themselves religious and do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Now, when he talks about religion here, he's not talking about how we may use it in some corporate context, like what religion are you? Oh, I'm Church of Christ, or I'm Hindu, or I'm Catholic. That's not what he's saying here. When he relates to religion here, it's actually about our response to God, how we engage. Today we might describe it more of a way of saying worship. You know, we worship with our voice, with our song, we worship with our activities, with our deeds. That's what he means when he talks about religion here. One writer says this: religion is the external manifestation of spirituality, a relationship to God rooted in the heart of shaping one's life. Another describes it as a comprehensive word for the specific way in which our heart relationship to God is expressed in our lives. Kind of like God in us, then gets revealed through us. That's what he's referencing when he's talking about religion. How we operate, how we act, what we do is a response from what's within us. In 26, he says, those who consider themselves religious and do not keep a tight rein on their tongue deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. One translation uses the term unbridled. And when you continue to go through the letter, James is quite specific about the power of our tongue, the power of what we say. He uses references like the bit in a horse's mouth, or the rudder of a really great ship. The tongue can control and direct our lives. And he's saying, be very, very cautious. And again, what comes out of our mouth is a representation of what's in us. How do we relate? What do we do? Verse 27, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after the orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Now, in the ancient Near East, there wasn't Centrelink. There wasn't the support networks that we have today. If you were a widow or an orphan, you had all sorts of trouble ahead of you. In fact, it was often even believed that the culture of the time would perceive widows as people who have sinned, they've done something wrong, they've brought it on themselves, or orphans, it's their fault. You know, it's their problem. We see that in the East today. These people would become desolate, they would end up on the streets. Life was not good for a widow or an orphan. When you look at the word orphan here, it says to be alone or bereaved, often rendered fatherless. This is the idea of a person without any legal standing in their community. It's someone who's shunned, who's forgotten, who's broken, who's lost. These people, the widows and orphans, can do nothing in return. They can do nothing in return. Yet here James is saying that's what that God's looking for. That's the religion that God's looking for. Take care of the people who can't do anything. Take care of the people who can't do anything in return for what you do and how you serve them. And a Christian in that time would do that. They would see an orphan or a widow and they would bring them into their family. They'd bring them into their community, often calling them their own. kind of in the same way they've been adopted into the family of Jesus. They would do the same for those who are destitute. James is saying, how do you know if God's at work in you? Well, you're going to do the things that God would do. You're going to operate in a way that Jesus would operate. You know, the more you know Jesus, the more you have him in you, the more he's going to come out of you in your words and your deeds and your actions. And James is saying that the religion or worship that is important to God corresponds to the mind and the will of God. It should be a reflection of what's inside as it comes out. You know, if I read this passage, as I read this passage and I read the term orphan, and I think about Kids Hope, and I think about the children that we get to serve, those facing vulnerability, many of them would actually fit a lot of the criteria of an orphan. They're alone, bereaved. Some are fatherless, unprotected. They're needy. They're exposed to oppression. They're possibly without earthly parents, whether it be physically or emotionally. I was chatting to an educator just the other day, and they were saying how they've seen young children who don't know how to communicate because the way their brain hasn't had the opportunity to form because they just haven't had interaction with an adult. Like they're just peripheral to the family and their brain hasn't had the opportunity to form. And they're finding more and more of these children in schools. We see these kids with orphan attributes all around us today. Kids are more connected than ever before and more lonely than ever before. Not dissimilar to the representation of what our society looks like. Kids are facing issues of parental screen addiction. We've got a society of parents who have never been kind of taught to parent. The effects of social media, the screen time that children have and the development on their capacity to even see peripheral vision. Are you aware that so many children are lacking the capacity for peripheral vision because they're doing this all the time? That is the world that our young people are growing up in. What the kids have to contend with today is so more complex than what we ever had to. I'm confident that those kids facing vulnerability today would be the same kids that James would be saying to those who loved Jesus 2,000 years ago. Take care of them. Serve them. Bring them in your community. Love them. Be part of their world. And that's what we do at Kids Hope. We create opportunities for people who love Jesus to serve their local community an hour a week. 1 hour a week. One adult, one child, 1 hour a week. It's not rocket science, but it works. Could you imagine these children who have no one speaking to them at home have the undivided attention of a trusted adult for an hour a week? Just to hang out, just to do crafts, to cook, to read a book, whatever it might be, to play basketball, to kick a football, whatever it might be that gives the child the opportunity to build relationship with this trusted adult. That's what we do. Right now you've got Charthouse Primary School just up the road, and they're keen. They'd love to have a partnership with a church like yours to run the Kids Hope program. I was looking back through some of the notes. One of my team members had the interaction with one of the people from the school, and they asked, how many kids could we support if necessary? And the response was the school wants all and any help they can get. Wow. What would it look like if 5 people from this community said, we'll do that? What would it look like if 20 people from this community said, we'll do that? I've got an hour a week I can invest. What could that look like for those children? What could that look like for that school community? I often find myself wondering, what if we don't? What if we just stopped? What if Kids Hope just stopped? Well, we'd be missing a significant opportunity. Right now across our nation, we've got 40 schools waiting for a Kids Hope program. 40! 40 schools who have come to us, often unsolicited, saying, hey, Kids Hope, can you please connect us with the church? We want them in our world. That's unheard of. 40 schools. We had 8 schools reach out to us in 3 weeks, unsolicited, saying, can we have a Kids Hope program? We need the support. We need the wellbeing support. You know, in Australia right now in 2024, there's around 13,000 churches. There's 5,664 government primary schools. The maths are pretty good. We should be able to serve any kid who's looking for the support that Kids Hope can provide. If we don't, thousands of kids will have missed the opportunity to have a caring adult in their life. But I often wonder about what if we do? What if we really are able to take hold of this opportunity that's being presented to us, to lean into it, to see it grow even more across our nation? We hear the stories of transformation, the life-transforming relationship between a church and school. I shared before about that vice principal helping herself to the platform at the church to say thank you. Thank you for all that you do. You know, I remember speaking to a mentor just recently, and he was sharing about his first mentee 20 years ago. And this was a little girl who just would not talk. I'm not entirely sure whether she was selectively mute, but would not engage, would not talk. And for 2 terms, he spent an hour a week with her. Nothing, zilch, nada. And he's like, prayed about it. He's like, oh God, I've got to work this out. Like, how can I connect with this child? So term 3, he comes back and he goes, you know what? I'll just go through the alphabet. So he starts doing the alphabet. A. What's this letter? A. What's it stand for? Apple. Well done. What's this letter? B. What does that stand for? Banana. Great job. And he starts going through the alphabet and he gets to I. And he says, what does this stand for? And she says, I love you. This child who hadn't spoken for 2 terms was revealing that she loved the connection with this mentor. From what I'm told, that child went from the one who wouldn't talk to the one who wouldn't shut up. She'd be 26 now. Story after story of transformation because one adult chose to invest 1 hour with one child once a week. In a most recent survey, 99% of teachers said Kids Hope is awesome and would recommend it for other kids. They talk about the fact it makes a child feel special. It's really, really stunning. But one of the things we do at Kids Hope is ask, what's your why? What's my why? You know, when I applied for this job, my mum said, gee, I wish you had Kids Hope when you were a kid. This is me when I was in grade 2. Yeah, I'm cute, right? Age caught up with me, I get it, whatever. My family had just gone through a pretty challenging season. You see, my dad decided to leave my family when I was 4. And by this point, Mum couldn't afford the mortgage, so we had to move from one town to another. And they decided it would be wise for me to start in the new school at the end of the last 2 weeks of grade 1, so I could get to know some kids before grade 2. Well, I had this girl who bullied me, and she was a teacher's kid. So, there was extra complexities about trying to, deal with your stuff. But it was just horrific, and I was promised she was not going to be in my class next year. Grade 2 comes around. Guess who's in the line? I bawled. And this kid comes up to me and goes, you right? I went, yes. Well, his name was Lael. His family had just moved to town. And I connected with them. Turns out they were a Christian family, as were we. That day I went back to their household and became part of their additional family. I became a surrogate Zish. And Rodney, their dad, treated me like one of his own. You know, he probably didn't know at that point what it meant to me to have someone who just cared. But now as I reflect back and I know him as an adult still, and my kids call him Papa Rodney, I can share what it meant to have a person in my world that cared. He didn't do anything special. He just, treated me like one of his kids. We then had some additional challenges through my young years. My dad passed away when I was 10, and then his wife, who he'd left us for, was tragically murdered the year later. We had a stepfather through my teenage years who just, let's say, wasn't very helpful. And the challenges continued. And then there was my trombone teacher, Viv. Yes, I play trombone, clearly. I look like a trombone player, right? Well, I don't play anymore. I used to. I'd sit in my trombone lessons and just download. That 1 hour a week, just go blah, 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 blah. And occasionally she'd just listen and she'd go, should we pick up the trombone now? I've had the privilege of sharing with her now as an adult what it's meant for me to have had those moments where I just had someone who was outside my world, who wasn't involved in my day-to-day, and I could just go blah to. It made such a significant difference. I showed you the photo of my family before. Here they are again. Because I truly believe if I did not have people like that in my life, I'm not sure I would have had this family. Statistics says everything about my life should be that I'm not somewhat healthy, with an amazing family, married for nearly 30 years. But there was people along my life that let me just talk, that let me just debrief, that let me just deal with things. Some of those were outside the church community, some of those were within the church community, and it made such a difference. James 1:26 and 27. Those who consider themselves religious and do not keep a tight rein on their tongue deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after the widows and the orphans in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. There's an opportunity for us here today, friends. There's an opportunity for you to partner with a local school and see significant influence and change in the lives of those children who we might call orphans. If you have a look on the back of your chairs, you've got the Linktree notes. You've got a link there specifically for this conversation today. There's kids right now who need you. If you could invest an hour a week, what will that mean to them? What will their story be like? What will be different because you've been in their world? I had one mentor say it's the most difficult thing I've ever done, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Charthouse Primary School is waiting for you. We can work on building that relationship for you. If you're a prayer, please be praying for us. There's so much need. There's so much to fulfill across this nation. There's so many schools that want support. There's so many kids who need it. Thank you so much for your time. Can I pray for you? Lord, I thank you for this amazing church. I thank you for a community of people that truly love serving those around them, that truly love serving those that don't know you, as a response to who you are and what you've done in them. I pray, whether it be with Kids Hope or whatever else, Lord, that this church would continue to be known as one who is in the community, that loves the community, that serves the community with no expectation of return. And Lord, I pray that many, many, many people would ask the question, why? And then enter into a conversation about a relationship with you. Father, bless my friends in your wonderful name.